of these people you're talking about are probably in Who's Who.
They're all over the place. So a key skill, suspend judgment. Well, that one you know about.
Right. What additional key skills are there that prepare people for an economy that's not here, that prepare people for life, as well as giving them the skills for academic success? And that's a key one, suspending judgment.
Let me tell you what you can get out of this stuff. If you put one in there, like suspended judgment, then you have to do what I did, which is say, how can I have a lesson with the thing that really comes out is that you better suspend judgment before you make a decision like the animal is dead. I mean, all you have to do is look at the tail under a microscope and you can determine whether it's dead or not. But just because it's floating on top of the water doesn't mean it's dead. So you've got to be, you don't put it in there unless you're going to do 4 or 5 of those kinds of activities where you're getting the message across to students. So when I looked at science, in my mind, one of the goals was, whether it was 6th or 7th, was suspended judgment. So I figured I had my people there to examine me. I would prepare a lesson because it was a foreign area. I mean, foreign in the sense that I went into the thing and I could see what's there, and out of that I got to prepare a lesson and teach it to a group of kids I never saw before in my life. So I didn't know what I was going to do until I got to the room and I ahead of time and saw this tank sitting there. So then I went into the chemistry where they have these chemicals, and there was a thing I needed. So I said, well, I'll teach a lesson. Of course, they're here to see me teach. I'll teach a lesson on suspended judgment. It was not something I planned ahead of time. But it depended on what I wanted to do to that group that had nothing to do with what they were doing. And there it was. One of the objectives was suspended judgment. So the reason I say that to you is most of the time it's no one pays attention to those goddamn 6 or 7 reasons for teaching biology. And one of the reasons was to help children suspend judgment.
And so you can have these wonderful mission statements, but what you're saying is have 5 or 6 actual classes that every student goes through.
Yeah, they did that all together as a class, because I had one fish and I was going to play with it. But it started even before I started to play with it, because their fish was floating. Because I didn't anesthetize it in front of them.
Now, some people would say, well, we do this with requiring Holocaust in the curriculum. By the time they've gone through 8th grade, everybody knows what Holocaust means. But your point is, they've got to have a specific activity, not just a general, here's a picture.
It's okay, but you should have, if you know what the Holocaust means, then I'd have you do some research and see where are the potentials for another one of these. Why did you pick this country? Is it possible that we could have one here? Because in 1930, if they asked if it was possible to have one in Germany, they'd say no.
Right.
No.
We're not that kind of people.
That's exactly right. And most of them aren't. It's just they gave away it's just like now, what's his name is asking for more power in Venezuela.
Chavez.
Yeah, that's what he's doing. He cancels the Congress that they had, or whatever they called it, and he wants all the power. So there's a place where you're going to have, he can almost do anything he wants. Because there's still plenty of poor people that'll support him no matter what. And it's not that they believe in everything he's doing, but they believe in a few things he's giving them.
He fixed their prices. They remember that.
Exactly. Well, that's what Hitler did for Germany.
Fixed the Weimar Republic. Say, okay, we're not going to buy bread with a suitcase full of bills.
That's correct.
He brought stability. He got the transfer.
And he created an army. So
returned pride.
So it's this kind of a thing. So
that's the precise example that Howard Gardner gives when he's describing performing and understanding. Does the student merely regurgitate facts of what happened in the 1930s and 40s, or do they go one step further and perform their understanding by pointing out that, hey, there was genocide in Rwanda? Isn't that linked? And by making that leap, they're performing their understanding of the original
also prejudice
concept.
right in this country. Swastikas on synagogues and temples and other things.
It's more than graffiti. Something else could happen behind that.
That's correct. That's correct. So look, we haven't. We've come some distance, but not all the way. Not where we should be. All right. So this you want me to talk to?
He's in United Kingdom, and
The United Kingdom has a different problem.
okay.
They've now let in a large number of immigrant Muslims who do not want to integrate into the British belief systems and ethics and morals and all of that. They believe through their religion, they believe what they believe.
They even have Sharia law. There are some instances where the
In
British
England
government has allowed
it.
that.
Has allowed it. In contrast to Australia.
Oh, interesting. Right.
You know what the minister says in Australia? You don't like it here the way it is? Goodbye. We didn't ask you to come, so you came here voluntarily to be an Australian. You don't like it? Leave. But we're not going to change. We're not going to take your language. We're not going to allow anything like that here. If you walk in the streets, you got to walk in the streets without that on covering your face. We want to see your face. Mainly to see you smile. No, I'm serious about this.
Right.
The same thing is happening in Sweden. All of a sudden, Sweden is becoming anti-Semitic. It's not the Swedes itself, but those are a large, fairly population. Look what's happening in France. So by allowing them to come in and not assimilate, because that's not what they want. These countries now have problems. And we indirectly are doing the same thing. If we don't all speak English, how do we communicate if that's our language? So we have no means of communication. Because you speak Spanish and I speak English. So what did I do? I now have the ballots in Spanish. So now you're a citizen of an English-speaking country, but you can't speak English. And
you can't hear on the radio or read the newspaper to find out what the issue is, and yet you're voting in Spanish.
That's correct. So we have to now give you Spanish broadcasting, we have to give you Spanish newspapers, and we have to put the voting in Spanish. And now we're doing the same in Creole. So what do? They live in their. It forces them into the ghetto.
This is in good intent. It's with the goal of including them in the.
That's why we let them in.
Now, the power of this nation was its immigrants, part of it. And then the power of assimilation was through the public school system. So you raise this issue in regard to a school because a school could have a role in assimilation.
We try. We have English as a second language.
Mm-hmm.
We have schools that teach that only that ESC, what I call it, English. Yeah, English as a second language. ESL.
Right.
Yeah. So we have that. And for those people who are in the public schools, they are learning English. So the second generation is learning English.
And we interpret that as assimilating, which seems to be a negative connotation, like you've abandoned your home.
No, they go home and they speak Spanish.
Well, what happened to Jack Latona's, commissioner of city Fort Lauderdale? His father imposed English on his kids. He said, "You've got to learn English," and that's why he went to Yale, second generation in Yale University. Because of that drive for assimilation, he doesn't speak Italian because it was so frowned upon. And what we need is an international. We need those bilingual kids for the world economy. So his method worked for him. He got so assimilated that he is an American, but he's no good to that world global economy. He had the opportunity to pick up a second language and didn't because of the culture of the time. His father basically said, "We're here in America, we're embracing America."
That group of immigrants that you're talking about, his father, that age group, they wanted to assimilate.
Oh yeah, because it was dangerous not to. You couldn't make it.
Well,
there was no real future if you didn't learn English.
For whatever reason, but I said to my father once, "Why don't you go back and visit where you came from?" He says, "I wouldn't go back there if you bought the ticket for me."
Wow. That much fear?
No.
No?
That much anger at what his father went through to rescue him, that enabled him at age 12 to come here.
Because his father didn't make it?
His father never came.
Wow. That's love.
His father took him out of Russia, changed his name, ran across the border, set up then he married in Romania. He died in Romania, and my father came here, 12 years old.
That's a story in itself. I mean...
No, that's how a lot of people did that.
Yeah. My wife's family, same thing.
That's how they came. They took a dead man's name. That wasn't my name. I don't even know I can only go back one generation, just to my grandfather by interaction, but not by knowing him. I never met him.
Right. So you never met your grandfather, right?
I never met my grandfather on my father's side.
Right.
Ever. In fact, my father took his sister here.
12 years old.
No, he came here by himself.
Yeah.
He worked.
Right.
And then he took his mother and his sister.
Oh, he had to go back to bring them over, or he sent money for them?
Bought the tickets.
Wow.
Did whatever he had to do. And there's an organization in New York called HIAS, or something like that, that helped them.
To reunite families.
Well, yeah, to know how to go about doing it. There was an organization to help them. All right.
So the challenge of the school in England then is to set up conditions where assimilation, positive assimilation.
It depends on who the population is. So far, he's only got 2 kids. I'm assuming these are kids that couldn't make it in a public school.
Right. That's the idea.
Similar to Maverick. Well,
he's got 15 more that are coming on in January. So he's got 2 boats. Both have like 8 kids.
Well, the boats are a tool, because on a boat, everyone has responsibility. There are things that have to be taken care of. All of that kind of stuff. So if you think about a boat, you have to learn navigation. You have to know some math. You have to know triangulation. You got to know all of these kinds of skills. So if you think about it, that becomes part of what you're going to teach them. But you're also going to teach them that they got to be responsible for keeping the ship clean. It's tight. You can't throw around your stuff. All those kind of things, because you're living in that kind of an environment. Now it depends on how they're living in that environment and what responsibilities they have. But there's a lot to a boat.
People skills.
A lot of people skills.
And so it goes beyond in describing the curriculum, because you got to get parents on board. You know,
They're not going to come home and throw their clothes in the bedroom. That's not going to happen.
The challenge of most charter schools is, how do you get the parents to agree that in 6 months we're transferring your child over? They've got to go. You almost have to have everything set up so that the parent can walk through the classroom. And so you're 6 months dead, nothing happening. Just be able to bring those students in 6 months from now to have a full class.
You start off with what you got.
Yeah.
But that kids come in. And if it's a good program, they'll bring kids in.
Right.
They'll talk to their friends that look like them.
Right.
Because that's how they assimilate in the gangs.
Peer-to-peer marketing.
You just got to kind of think of a boat